Well, joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Glenn Carle. He's the former CIA officer and author. We also have Manju Seth, who's a former diplomat. Glenn, I'm coming to you and taking in a word from you first. We've had a statement coming in from Antony Blinken, and he's called this a significant escalation in the next few days, as Beijing is also taking certain diplomatic stands, suspending conversations with the United States. How do you see this really playing out?
Well, I think that Blinken spoke accurately. The Chinese, as a general principle of statecraft, ambiguity is always good. Now, on both sides, Pelosi's trip and Xi Jinping's response have lacked ambiguity. And they are boxing each side in. Xi, by having played for over a decade, and the Chinese Communist Party for 30 years, having played the nationalist card, now has to prove his manhood to a large number of bloggers and reactions in the Chinese media that are quite critical of Chinese cowardice and weakness about Pelosi's trip. He might want to respond, but he essentially has to, or to appear weak. Pelosi, by announcing her trip at this time, has made it hard for the United States to ignore the Chinese reaction. So both sides actually are boxing themselves in. Now, I think the U.S. position, as expressed, demonstrated by Pelosi, is fundamentally the correct one. I don't think this is the right time, really, to do it, given that we have a larger issue to deal with in Ukraine and Russia right now.
Glenn, you made an interesting point about ambiguity as a tool of statecraft and how U.S. has had it. China doesn't seem to be having it. Is that an asset or a strength that they have in the changing world order, or the dominance that they want to show to the rest of the world, directly challenging United States of America?
Well, they have a different series of objectives. They seem pretty clearly to reject the normative international order, at least as it has been expressed with regard to international law of the sea, international relations, economic relations, and diplomacy in South Asia, from India to Guam, and at some point that may well cause a clash, not just a series of disagreements. I don't think this is the right moment for the United States to draw a line in the water, as it were. But yes, China and the United States, China and every other nation, have clearly incompatible conceptions of how the international order should function in South Asia.
Very interesting. You say that so succinctly, and you point out, Manju, would you agree? The argument which is being made by Glenn is that this is not the time U.S. can draw that line or even ask China to toe that line. And China is becoming more and more aggressive and assertive at the global stage. And the international order, that's what they're trying to change.
Absolutely. You can see that they see this moment as a provocation. This whole visit is a provocation. China says it is a provocation, and they have taken, as Glenn said, a direct reaction. They have not shown any ambiguity that was carrying on that they were sort of adopting all this while. But the U.S. has still maintained its ambiguous stand, strategic ambiguity, so to speak, vis-a-vis Taiwan. And China has, again, has not shown that, though earlier it was a bit, it did have an ambiguous thing. But it is also, the other thing that we have to remember is that it has become very, very powerful, and it can see that the geopolitical and geostrategic shifts taking place across the world. Yeah. And their perception is that the US is now more weakened than it ever was. And so they think that since their economy has grown and it's the second most economically powerful country in the world, it feels it can challenge the US's influence in this region, in Asia, and in Taiwan.
Manjuji, that's exactly the point I want to understand from you, and this is a similar point that Glenn had also made about strategic ambiguity. So far, it has served the U.S. interest on the global platform. But things are changing. Things are changing, and this is a far more aggressive and assertive China, which makes this strategic ambiguity look like a weakness. Is that sustainable for the U.S. in the next few years?
It is, I think, strategic ambiguity for as statecraft, as mentioned by Glenn, is a very useful tool. But given China's aggressive and assertive stance at the moment everywhere, in the Indo-Pacific, in the South China Sea, in South Asia, everywhere, this may not, the US may not be able to carry on with this approach much longer.
Okay.
At least not in the economic field. They will have to put pressure on the economic field, and you have seen today already that US has, China has imposed sanctions. It has called off climate talks, etc. So it is trying to pressurize the US and taking retaliatory measures for this visit by Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan. But whether militarily the US would like to take any action right now, I think that would not, maybe counterproductive.
Yeah.
But economic hardship will have to be, or costs will have to be imposed if we want China to change its posturing and change its assertive behavior.
Okay.
And I think economic hardship is the only way, economic cost is the only way to make China understand that it cannot have its way all the time.
Glenn,
it has to stop.
Yes, we've been discussing this issue, Glenn, for the last few days, ever since this crisis has really erupted. And I've spoken to a lot of experts who argue that somebody got to take the bully by its horns. I mean, if China is becoming more and more assertive, then powers like United States of America or the regional blocs will have to take far bigger effort and stand. And if it involves some kind of confrontation, they might have to be ready for it. Is that the price that the world or America is ready to pay at this point in time?
Well, I think that the Biden administration has not received the credit that it should have for its strategic approach. Will restrict the focus to South Asia, from Pakistan to Guam, let's say. Biden has been strategic, understated, and yet clear diplomatically, economically, and militarily in reestablishing U.S. alliance strength with all of the states of South Asia, I'll call it, clearly in response to, in reaction against Chinese aggression, economically also, and politically. Now, are these measures sufficient? One can certainly argue that they have not been, but they have been quite coherent. The one different note has been the Pelosi trip. I don't think that President Biden's, quote, gaffe, unquote, when he said, well, of course the United States will defend Taiwan militarily, was in fact a gaffe. I think that it was a deniable, clear affirmation of America's strategic commitment. What I think, however, should have happened should happen, it has been happening, and that is, we all need to remember Sun Tzu. I keep saying this, and it sounds trite in the context of talking about China, which is that you change the realities on the ground, the objective correlation of forces, so that you don't have to have a military conflict. That means arming Taiwan so that invasion becomes such a costly decision to make that they would be wise enough to see that they shouldn't make it. All of this has been happening, perhaps not enough, but it has been happening. This visit does seem to be a clear decision, I think, to draw a line. I think it's premature and poorly timed, but as the other lady pointed out, at some point, the state needs to do that. Yes.